Hi everyone. I hope you guys can hear me well. I'm waiting for Frederic to accept the co-host invite. And can you give me a sign that you're hearing me well? Um, I saw that heart. Thank you. So Fred, you have to accept the co-host thing. Yes, I think there I have you. Hey, how are you? Very good. I'm so happy to be here again in the Art of Freedom show. I'm so happy to have you
Thank you.
here.
Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so today we're gonna have to miss Rebel very much because he couldn't make it, but he'll probably be listening to the chapter later on, and we will try to have you again when he's also here.
Awesome.
And before we start, I want to say the block height number. So, oh, a new block was just minted. So it's 860651. So we can start the show because we have our block height number. And I want to, yeah, how are you
I'm doing
today?
great. I'm excited to be here. I'm right in the middle of coloring some pages, so it's fun to come on here and talk about art and Bitcoin. And this is kind of a Venn diagram of my two passions, art and Bitcoin. So it's fun to be able to geek out with people who are into both.
Yeah, it's so crazy when you have, it's so weird to have one obsession. It's crazy to have two obsessions and then to have like a crossover between your obsessions. It's really amazing. So I would love to start this conversation by learning more about like your journey. I don't know if you want to go like into your very like briefly, how did you discover Bitcoin first, or the crossover with your creative artistic background, or you want to make them separate?
Sure. I mean, they're kind of separate. I grew up really loving comic books. I was born the son of a military dad, so moved around a lot. So having my nose in comics was very very helpful when you're moving from place to place and you're not making friends very quickly. So I had my nose deep in books since I was a kid, and it was kind of half learning to draw. Drawing comics was a passion, and half computer stuff as well. And I wanted to become a professional comic book artist. I was working hard to gain all the skills. I was accepted in the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphics Arts, but it's a private school in the United States, and my Canadian parents could not afford to have me move to New Jersey and then attend the school there. So it was a bit too much. So I went to CJEP over here, and I discovered Bitcoin way later in 2017. And what I could not make my artistic career work at the time. It was a strange time in comics. It was like the boom and then the bust was coming up. And as hard as I tried to break into comics, I developed like tendonitis and health problems and then a lot of financial issues came up as well, because trying to earn your living as an artist is not always easy. And sometimes you fall into that old cliche of the starving artist, and hopefully Bitcoin will help us get rid of that old cliche. But I had to put aside my comic book passion for a long time to find a job that would pay well. And then I started doing websites and web development programming, and it was much easier to earn a normal wage, a normal living. And then I discovered Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin gave me like new resources that I didn't have before. And it's another passion. Like it's not just a mild passing interest. Bitcoin, you know how it is. When you jump down the rabbit hole, it's one deep rabbit hole. Bitcoin is a complex system. It affects a lot of things. It changes people as well. And recently, a good friend of mine had, well, I say recently, it's like a couple of years ago, but a good friend of mine was his girlfriend was getting rid of his drawing table, and he asked me if I wanted it. And my apartment was full, but I was like, yeah, sure, bring it over, we'll make some room. And I brought the drawing table in, and I started sketching again, and ideas started to come to fruition. And I was seeing a lot of comics out there in the mainstream industry, a lot of woke stuff was going out there. The stuff that's produced by the DC Comics, Marvel Comics, everything was going the same ways that the movies were going. They're turning all the characters to fit a checklist of the World Economic Forum, or BlackRock's list of changes they want people to make. So they're basically using our the characters we loved growing up and turning it into propaganda, and that was kind of that was kind of sickening. And I felt it was the right time to come back to comics, and it was going to be easy to make something that wasn't going to be woke, that was going to be, inspiring and filled with hope and excitement and going back to the roots of what gave me my passion in the first place. So that's kind of how the two started working together and bringing me to this space where I created a Bitcoin superhero, because let's face it, Bitcoin is filled with superheroes, right? The first creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, we still don't know who he is. Like, he has a secret identity. This is like typical superhero 101, right? And the world of Bitcoin is filled with heroes as well. Anonymous heroes, heroes who are standing tall and speaking their mind and voicing their knowledge and spreading the truth about Bitcoin and the changes it can bring about. So it felt natural to bring the psychology of a Bitcoiner into a superhero. It feels like it makes a lot of sense. Batman was the superhero of my childhood, right? Batman has Wayne Enterprises. He has a corporation that builds him tools and everything. Well, Rattel, he had a hard time. He was kind of criminalized trying to do what he's doing, and went to jail, but he went to jail with a fat stack of Bitcoin. So he was keeping his prison wallet inside his head for 10 years, and he comes out, he has as much money as Batman does, but nobody knows. He's completely anonymous. So he's walking around with a heavy past of being a criminal and trying to building his life back up. But at the same time, he has this, immense wealth that he can use to make things right in the world. And, he's a little strange, he's a little kooky. He wants to become a superhero, and he's flying around on a hoverboard or a quadcopter. So, that's the exciting visual aspects of superhero comics that come in there.
That sounds so good, and I love how your comic kind of obsession started before Bitcoin, and then it made sense to you. It's crazy, because when we start thinking about the hero, like psychology, or how would you define a hero? And then we also sometimes see this, how would you define a Bitcoiner? And I know everyone is like, we all have failures, and we all have our things, and we try our best. But the actual difference I see in a Bitcoiner from a normie is that in this trying the best is not only for oneself. It's like the best for me, but in a kind of community mindset, which I would see also in a very traditional hero. The hero is not looking only for himself or for what he believes to be just, but what would make the world a better place.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we see in Bitcoiners. I mean, Bitcoiners compared to normies, let's call them that way. Bitcoiners are hopeful. They believe in a bright future, and they're building towards a bright future because they know it's coming. So they're preparing for it, and they're having little kids, little babies, the new Bitcoiners, and they're preparing for a better, brighter world. Normies haven't caught on to the fact that we've fixed the money already, and they're still living in the Hollywood programmed kind of apocalypse that they're kind of steering everyone into. So I want to bring back the hopefulness of the old school heroes. A lot of our heroes now have turned dark, have turned very nihilistic. They're almost depressing to read at times. So I think it's important to go back to the roots of the hero, someone who faces adversity, who has a lot of trials and tribulations, but doesn't quit, overcomes them, and grows to surpass himself, and as you say, like to make sacrifices to make for those around him to help them make the world a better place. And the hero, besides being a hero on the streets who's actually fighting supervillains and all that, he's also a Bitcoiner. He's a miner. He has ASICs that he's building up. He's trying to start up his own Bitcoin farm, and he's trying to change the world in real, tangible ways as a Bitcoiner, as well as in the more traditional superhero kind of action adventure ways as well.
Yeah, about that, it's crazy how I've been like we have been talking about this, and we have seen this. So culture in general is reflecting our society's worst sides of it. I think I've seen, like, if you go to the traditional art world and you see these manifestations of like despair and hope, it doesn't exist there, and it's like what I put it when I try to put it into words. What I see is that art creations, like in general, of course, there are people who are amazing, but in general, we see this like as if they were ashamed of the creator. That's my perspective. Like humanity is ashamed of itself, so the cultural manifestations will say that humans are the worst, and we can't see anything of beauty, anything of goodness or virtues. And if art were to display those virtues, it would have to embrace that humans aren't only like awful. And I've experienced that in like the mainstream art world, but I didn't like put attention or didn't notice how that could also be seen in other things like comic
Oh,
world.
absolutely. I mean, the art world, the comic world, because our ideas are formed from our culture, from the entertainment we read. The songs we listen to, the music we listen to, the films we watch, the books we read, and there's an expression that says politics is downstream from culture, because what we build as a culture will determine what ideas we hold in our head, and how we choose to live our lives. A lot of those things come from the culture, or the people we live with, our community. And we've been living so long in a corporate culture where CEOs have been deciding what's been being told to us in our stories. Our entertainment is all, from a hierarchy high up. I think it's time we take back our culture in a decentralized fashion. That's why I really love places like Nostr, because I'm no longer limited to the whims of one corporate entity. I have my keys on Nostr. I can share my art there, and no one can stop the signal. And it's completely decentralized. And those who love me follow me, and those who don't, get out of the way, because I'm coming with my message, and it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm thinking about your comic now, Ratel. So Ratel, I had to check out. Is it the honey badger?
Yes, yes. So
Yes.
I thought of calling him Honey Badger as the most obvious idea. A lot of superheroes are called like animals, like Spider-Man, Batman, all that. But honey badger is such a common term in the Bitcoin space. I thought it would be a bit too on the nose. So, especially considering the fact that he lives in Montreal, I live in Quebec, which is the French portion of Canada. And having a superhero based here, I thought giving him the French name would make him stand out a little bit more. Because if you do a search for Rattel on Nostr, I'll be the only one to pop up almost. Whereas if you search for Honey Badger, you'll get loads of memes and loads of references and videos. And I wanted to distinguish the project from the traditional name, but I still got the name honeybadgercomic.com just in case. So,
No, I think this was a very smart move because I didn't know that. I think in Spanish it's also Ratel is also a word for honey badger. I only heard like the literal translation, like honey
yeah.
badger. Yeah, tejón de la miel. So it was very beautiful to when you start looking, when you have to dig a bit more. I think it kind of activates something in your brain, then it's more memorable. So I think it was very beautiful to discover that he is the honey badger hero.
Yeah, I wanted to make him like feel like he's a real Bitcoiner and not a caricature, right? I didn't want to do something so on the nose, call him Bitcoin Man and have a Bitcoin logo on his chest, and it's too it's too campy, it's too on the nose, and it doesn't feel real. Like a real Bitcoiner would, would be inspired by the animal, the honey badger. Rattel, his thing is that he does not have any fear. When he went to prison, he was sent wrongfully to prison for crimes, or hacking crimes. And he was filled with fear, as you are as a young man who's going off to be incarcerated. So what he does is he prays to God to take his fear from him. And that's when his fear leaves his body and he no longer has any fear, which is why he becomes the honey badger. Now, this doesn't make him superhuman powerful or anything. He just doesn't have any fear. So he gets into a lot of hard situation and a lot of fights, but people come to respect him, and you know he has what it takes to be a hero.
That's so nice. Is this like, were you thinking about like, I don't know if it's like a quote or a reference to V of Vendetta, or is just a coincidence?
Uh,
Because I don't know if you remember when he's like V has I don't remember the girl's name, so he has it in this prison, and they do all this whole thing, and then she discovers it was like fake, but then he said what you felt is not fake, and then he's like, I have freed you from fear. You no longer have fear, or something
oh,
like that.
right, right. No, I hadn't thought of that. It came from elsewhere, but it's nice to see parallels there.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful when you have like amazing. We always in the creative world we are always maybe, and when you mix creativity and Bitcoin, we have we go to the same topics and all of that, but we give it our own perspective. So I think it's very beautiful when these references connect. In my case, I'm very obvious. Like I sometimes I quote classical paintings, because I like that idea of connecting with what other people have done before me. So I love when you see these connections between
Oh,
pieces.
for sure. And I want to bring in connections that have been done in the Bitcoin space as well. Like, have you ever heard of the Bitcoin time traveler?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's an interesting story because that's mainly where the idea of citadels came from. So there was this post on Reddit many years ago about someone claiming to be from the future. And he's saying, like, I've seen Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a huge success, but terrible things are going to happen as Bitcoin becomes the standard. And he sort of laid out a horrible world where Bitcoiners would have to flee in citadels to protect themselves. And he did a bunch of price predictions, which were very close for a while, for a few years. And it's this it's this strange concept that someone brought in through a Reddit post, but I think it's an interesting piece of history to bring into a world of fiction, like a superhero comic. So there's these elements of the Bitcoin culture that I want to bring in, as well as having it feel like a cyberpunk story, because Bitcoin is very cyberpunk, and it's the world in which he operates. I mean, let's face it, the present today feels like the future of the 90s, right?
Yeah, it's been crazy. Sometimes I can, like, when you stop for a second, because you're like going with it, and then when you take a step back and you look at the crazy things that are happening around us, it's like sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
Absolutely. And that's why we need an escape from the world. That's why we need to read stories, listen to music. We can't be focused on the world's problems all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important. It's
No, yeah.
important to know they're there, to face them, to understand things are happening. But that's why I created the comic in a way as well, because it can get overwhelming, and you need to have a fun escape that you go to, and you're gonna have a good time, and you know that the good guys win at the end, and things turn out all right because it's a comic book.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I feel like some of these things, for example, I don't know if it's like on purpose, but I feel like they are on by design. So, for example, we are being bombed by this news all the time, and it's like awful, awful news. I think all these little things that make us go away from creativity, like you are more depressed, you don't want to see like hope in the world, you're just uh, I don't know, like keep going. People keep going and they keep mining the fiat, but it's like, oh, nothing is gonna ever gonna change. Look at this news all over the world. It's like sadness and awfulness. Um, so I think sometimes it's a bit of a rebellious act to actually not pay attention and do something to boost your creativity, whatever it is, because I don't see creativity as like only related to art.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
in everything,
Hmm.
to create a program, to do a hardware wallet, to whatever you are
Oh,
building,
absolutely.
you need creativity.
Sure, for sure. I mean, what Satoshi did was the incredible act of creativity that had massive consequences throughout the world. But he's at the center of this revolution. We need everybody who's involved has, their part is important as well. Like from the small node runners to the miners to the people who are just building the culture around it. Because I think this is where we are now. Like 4 years ago, I didn't see a lot of Bitcoin artists all over the place. I think this is something that's been growing over time. And I think we're going to have an explosion of talent and culture in this epoch, and it's,
Yeah.
it's incredibly motivating. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I've heard an interview of an old uh, KGB spy talking about communism and how it infiltrates countries, and one of its goals is to make people disillusioned and depressed, because when you're demoralized, even if you're told the truth and the things facts are revealed to you, when you're demoralized, you have no energy to act on anything. You have no will, no energy, no initiative, and it's like a slow death from the inside. And that's it's important to do that fight as well. And we fight that fight with culture, with memes, with reminding ourselves that it's not always a depressing, life isn't always depressing. There's brighter things coming ahead of us, and we're just going through a very difficult time at this moment. And it's confusing, it's difficult, and people are going to struggle through it. But that's why it's important to focus on the things that work, on the things that are sound, have a good solid foundation. And you want to surround yourself with people who have those shared values as well, and who are focusing on a bright future, because you're going to manifest in a way what you think of all the time. So if you're thinking of problems all the time, you're just going to focus more and more on those. But if you're focusing on beautiful things you can bring to this world, those will grow and come around as well and take more precedent, because we can't see all the opportunities in the future that are ahead, because we haven't we haven't created them yet. And when you
Yeah.
build projects, when you build art, when you build anything, you are connecting with people at the same time. You're opening doors to make connection, make new things possible. And that's when it gets really interesting, I think. It's when your art goes out into the world, and um, you get a return on what how people perceive it and view it.
Yeah, it's absolutely like it's a when you say like a snowball falling, but in a good way. So one creative action can be the input for another person to do another creative action, and creativity it fits itself. So that's also what I think that it makes perfect sense to me that they say this that they're like trying to demoralize people or something. It makes people more controllable, more like governable, you
Yep.
know?
I mean, you're not
Um,
going to be hard
yeah,
to hard to work with if you have no hopes for tomorrow, of no hopes for getting out. And it's like you can't escape the jail if you can't see the walls of the prison. So if you stay asleep and you stay in in your old ways, you're going to miss the shining bright train that's going to take you to a brighter future. You got to lift your head up and look around and find that child that child's heart again in you, where you can bring a complete openness to the world around you without all that programming, without all the baggage that has been added through the years. It's like Yoda used to say in Star Wars: you have to unlearn what you have learned to walk the new path in a way.
Yes, it's the beautiful thing is that we're seeing that this is possible. It's possible to it takes a lot of work, but it also so rewarding. And when you start to move into the Bitcoin standard, if you are consistent, if you like stay humble, stack sats, continue to do your art, create, and just it does pay off because people like there are collectors, there are people who are appreciating what we're creating, and that are willing to part from their sats, which is a lot for me. Like when I think
Yeah,
about it, like people are willing to give their sats for me to be able to keep creating, and then that makes me want to do my best. And it's like a positive input, and I see it with all our like very amazing artists friends. I see everyone is pushing to be better, to be worthy of those sats.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because we're working with a sound money standard instead of a fiat standard. So instead of our art going from, you know, our beautiful art history going into the modern decadence, I think Bitcoin is bringing us back out of that decadence into a new yearning for excellence again.
Yeah. Before we continue, I just want to say that everyone, if you want to ask a question, if you want to yeah, join the conversation, please do. As always, this is an open conversation for everyone who is here live with us. And I wanted to go more into like the comic itself. So I'm wondering like at what stage you are, because I was going through your website and I realized that you can check, like for example, you can check the progress and you see like writing is completed, and then you see all these progresses there. So but I wanted if you can like tell us about like what are you working on right now and how is it going?
Absolutely. So where I'm at, I'm about halfway done penciling the comic, about a third of the way done inking it. So inking is basically going over it with black ink to do the finish lines. And I have just about 3 pages who are colored. So that's where I'm at. So it's about halfway through the project, more or less. And where my focus on now is getting the fundraiser started. So I'm trying to build a fundraiser on Geyser.fund for the Bitcoin standard, and I also have a fiat option as well for my fiat friends who are not yet orange pilled, so they can still have access to the book. But where I'm at right now is trying to finish the samples so I can get a good fundraiser up and running and get people to pre-order the book so that I can have money for the printer and I can have enough readers built up so when the book comes out, so it's a successful launch. In other words, so I'm trying to build up the anticipation for the second half while I'm finishing the artwork and doing the fundraising at the same time of all that. So a lot of that involves promos, talking to people on interviews such as today, and doing streams and all that, and putting the word out, getting the word out, showing my art on Noster and Twitter, and yeah, that's where I'm at pretty much.
It's a lot of work when you start that marketing stage, kind of. Are you familiar with that? Like, have you done something like this before, or is this like your first time?
Um, I've done all the individual things before. Like I've worked as a comic book illustrator in the past, but I've never done my own work. So what is new for me this time is the writing. I've never written a story before, so I've relied on help from my author friends to guide me along and beta read as well to make sure that, because there's a saying that the art will sell the first book, but the story is going to sell all the other books that come afterwards, right? Because the art's good, it's fun, but you want the story to be a very interesting one that'll take you on a journey. So uh, I forgot the question. What were you?
No, it's okay. But yeah, and like about that, what you just said, the story itself. So how are you dealing? Because now you're handling with the comic people, who I guess is like very into details and like everything has to be perfect. But you're also mixing it up with the Bitcoiner people who are also very into detail and
Oh yeah.
very like searching that
Oh
everything
yeah.
makes sense. So how?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
how?
You drew an ASIC miner on your page one. Well, what year is that? Did ASIC miners exist in that year? Did you verify that? You got to check that. So I have two groups of beta readers: my comic book friends and my Bitcoiner friends. So they help me by finding those mistakes, finding those issues. And well, a comic book can never be perfect, and I don't think the goal is to be perfect either. I think you want to have fun with the style, and it's never about perfection. It's about fun more than anything else. But it's important to have a sound foundation where your story feels like it's real. You know, it has to have that verisimilitude. You have to feel that your hero is in a real world for his acts of heroism to feel real as well. So it's important to pay attention to these details. And yeah, comic book geeks have always paid attention to details, Bitcoiners as well. So it's super important to pay attention to those things. And no doubt they will catch a few errors that come through. So hopefully we can reward the people who find mistakes somehow by giving them like special issues of the comic and things like that. But yeah, it's part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, about like again the funding and all of that. So how are you like searching for these funds or like um yeah, how can people also help you if they want to help the project and all of
Right.
that?
So that's another thing. Following your question earlier, like what are the things I haven't done yet? Crowdfunding is something I've never done. So I'm paying a lot of attention to the indie comic book creators, what they're doing with perks and rewards around the crowdfunding campaigns. So I'm learning a lot from those guys. But I'm going to be bringing that into the Bitcoin space. So Bitcoin now has its own crowdfunding site called Geyser.fund, which I've started setting up my campaign there. It's not live yet. I'm waiting for the fourth color page to drop, as well as the text and all that. So I'm really close. I think within a month I should have the campaign up, and that's where people are going to be able to pre-order the book. So they're going to be able to send funds and reserve their copies, and I'm going to be able to use those funds to pay the printer ahead of time and get everything built for when it comes out. And this might be it's hard to say when. It's not going to happen by the end of this year. Seeing the progress I'm making, but early next year is probably when the comic's going to be printed and distributed. From there.
Perfect. So yeah, I really want to see it when it's done. I enjoy going through your site so much because it's like full of drawings and all of that. And I'm wondering, like, do you keep these originals? And are you planning, for example, like to show the originals sometimes or something like that?
I'd love to. I submitted page one for the expo in November. There's a conference in El Salvador, San Salvador, and so I submitted page one to be expoed there. I'll find out, I think, in about 6 days if it's accepted or not. Other than that, I do take commissions as well. So people who want a personal drawing can contact me for that. The spots are limited per month, obviously, because I have to keep the comic moving along. But I also do sell originals. So a lot of people in the Bitcoin meetups close to me have asked to purchase either illustrations or pages from the comic. So those are available as well as they come out and are scanned, obviously, for posterity.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to be able to sell the originals.
Yeah. And you show them like in your socials, or where can people like find if they wanted to purchase, for example,
Yeah,
one?
so I publish the art I'm working on mostly on Noster, also on Twitter. I also have an art stream on YouTube on Tuesdays where you can see me
Mhm.
working straight off the drawing table, and which also streams on Zapstream. You don't have to go to YouTube. You can go on Zapstream and even send me some zaps from there. And that's where you can see the progress, what I'm working on lately. So it is a mix of the actual comic I'm working on, commissions from clients and things like that. But it's always comic book art. That's the fun of it.
Perfect. Going back to the story, I'm wondering about the main character, so the hero. I like, is it how do you manage for it to be, because you told a bit of the story, like this guy did something, he got into jail, and then he's released. He has this a lot of Bitcoin, and he has this will of like changing the world and all of that. Um, so this is a general question. Like, I'm really curious about how to do you create a character, because it's very different. Like when I do a piece, it's like the piece completes itself, but in your world, every character is a world.
Yes. Yeah.
um, so yeah, how do you put the humanity into him? Like how do you decide what are I don't know, the mistake he makes or he doesn't, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those are great questions. And I don't know if I have the right answers to all that, but it's when you start spending time with your characters, they start to get a life of their own. That's kind of a gist of it. And when you follow one aspect of your character, it you can go down logical deductions of what all the other things they would do, and I'm trying not to make the character too much like me, not to have it be a self-insert. He's very different from me, but he does have that Bitcoiner mentality. What we call a maxi, a Bitcoin maxi. So no shit coins, very fundamentals, low time preference, and he even thinks all his time is annotated in block height, just like the show today. And I have to do a shout out for TC at the Time Chain Calendar, because his website is the main tool that I use to be able to notate time in the comic. Because he's such a Bitcoiner that he can only think in block height in a certain way, right? He's like completely absorbed by Bitcoin. So there's these unique quirks that kind of come to the surface because of that. And that's it's going to be interesting to follow. And he does a lot of stupid decisions as well, right? Because he's trying to change the world in ways that he's taking on things that are bigger than him. And I found that what really makes a hero is the villain as well. So in comic books, way more important than who is your hero is who's the villain and who's coming after him. And because he's going to be defined by the foes he's going to undertake. And the big baddie in my world is I call him simply Bankman. I thought it was appropriate because at the time, Sam Bankman Fraud was going to jail for his FTX scam. And I thought it was a very superhero name, Bankman. So it's not literally Sam Bankman Fraud, but it is a bankman, a sort of head of a network of banks in the city of Montreal. And he's also very fiat rich, right? Very close to the printer, and he pays his henchmen, which is sort of a super villain mafia around him, to do his evil bidding, and they will be sent out to attack Rattel and try to stop him from interfering in the villain's foils, basically, because he's also trying to bring about Bitcoin, fix the money, fix the world, and the natural enemy is the banks, right? It's the abuse of the usury system and the infinite debt system that we're in as well. So there's going to be a little bit of that without being too overwhelming. You want to keep it fun. You want to you want to at the end have supervillains fight it out with superheroes. But in the background, you'll have these important things that are true to the world and very important to Bitcoiners' hearts as well. Is the real victory we're having is the victory over the banks, and everything else is a kind of comes from that in a way.
I see. Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, how do you balance like the fun, the comic aspect, or like yeah, playful ideas or whatever, and all these very very serious issues that are so important for us today, and super serious.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you have to find a balance between the two, right? So in the first issue, there's a lot of the backstory about what I've been telling you, what are his crimes, how did he come to be arrested, where, who is he as a person? And there's also an important, like, good old kung fu action scene with some of the villains, right? Because you want to see him deck it out and fight and use his techno tools and all that for crime fighting tools as well. So I've tried to put both of those in the story and balance it out and move from one to the other. And I'm also bringing some, supernatural intervention in the Bitcoin space, which you don't find in which is you can only find in fiction basically, because one of the characters that the villains are running after in the first book is a Russian spy, but she's a special kind of spy. She's a psychic spy, so she can actually read in people's minds, and it's not a problem we have in our day to day as Bitcoiners, but in a comic book setting, she poses a threat because if she can read our hero's mind, what's to stop her from stealing his seed, his Bitcoin seed that he's memorized, right? So he's going to have to face some challenges that earthly Bitcoiners don't yet have to face, thankfully.
Yeah, that's so fun. Yeah, I'm loving to get like deeper into this world because I'm not that familiar with comic in general. And so you have how has like the community or the people who know you or whomever you have shown it, how has the reception
It's
been
been
so far?
incredible. I've been surprised at how well this is being received. First, by the wonderful people at the Bitcoin meetups here in Quebec. A lot of almost everyone says, I'm going to buy multiple copies from you. It's great. I want to buy some of the art. We're very close with the Bull Bitcoin employees, and they've sponsored the comic book. And one of them has even asked, paid to be his likeness in the comic as well. So incredible reception. I'm surprised and like really touched by how well it's going. I've even reached out to Madex to ask him if I could use one of his paintings as the back cover. He did a incredible raging honey badger painting that's so beautiful, and he, you know, I'm so thankful for him because he said he accepted. He said yes, so we're going to have his painting on the back cover as well. So we're integrating other Bitcoin artists as a feature on the back cover. So that's something that's close to my heart as well. And the reception is just crazy. People are optimistic. They're looking forward to it. I've just made some BTC pins as a perk to sell with the Bitcoin. People are asking when can they get it? When is it coming? When is it going to be available? So a very positive vibe. Bitcoiners are very generous, and they tend to support quality projects that understand Bitcoin and support Bitcoin. So it's very positive, overwhelmingly.
I also see that there is another, like, besides being amazing, like for ourselves, like to enjoy. I think these things, what you're building, or other kind of art or things like this, make it more approachable for normies too. So all of us probably we have normies in our lives. It's not only Bitcoiners around us, and I think like a comic like this one, it could be an amazing way to make Bitcoin also more approachable for those friends and family, and to see all this other perspective. Because um, sometimes I'm faced like people, well, people don't know what Bitcoin is, and when they know a little, they have really weird ideas and very strong and very like they define it in their minds and it doesn't move from there. And then you say like, yeah, I do Bitcoin art, and you can see these ideas like kind of breaking in their brains, like what, like how can you do art about this thing? It doesn't make sense in their heads. So that all, only by mentioning it defies what they believe. And now if you can present it in a comic, yeah, I think it can be a powerful tool.
100%. I mean, it partly came from a frustration of not being able to orange pill. Like, I found that it was easier to orange pill people back in the, like 7 years ago than it is now. It seems that people now they've already made up their mind of what Bitcoin is, regardless of the facts. So you have an additional kind of shell to get through before you can
Mhm.
tell people, no, this is actually a pretty cool thing. This is actually an incredible thing that's changing the world. It's not this money scam that you might think it is. It's not this fad. But Bitcoin is so incredible that sometimes it's overwhelming to try to communicate its use to people, because at least it is for me, because I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like, this solves the most pressing problems of our economy, because if we can't free ourselves enough to have time, then we have nothing, because all we have is time, and to be able to and we have to go back to a low time preference, because we can't live day to day. That's no way to live a life, to have culture, and to you know grow nations.
Yeah, yeah. It's impossible to build if you don't have
Yeah.
time. Well, I saw something. I was listening to a chapter of Simply Bitcoin while I was painting, and they were mentioning, I don't know if it was in the news or where they, but it was like a clip they put in, and it's a journalist talking about like how retirement is retiring. So our generations are not going to be able to retire, and they're like doing it very playful, very funny. You have to keep working until you die. You have to have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, as if this was normal, as if we as humans like turning into only production machines for someone else who is taking all of our time. I don't know. It's so crazy to
Yeah.
me.
And especially in Canada, it gets even crazier, because if you're too poor, then you become incentivized to go through the MAID program, which is, assisted death. And that is the most dystopian thing I've ever seen from any government, to be honest. And it scares the living crap out of me. And that's why I think it's important that our kids have hope, especially. I mean, one of the things about comics, it's very appealing to kids. It's mostly focused to help the newer generation try to wrap their head around what Bitcoin is, and how it can be useful to them.
Yeah, yeah. It really gives hope back. Hey, Skylar, I saw you have a question for our guest, or you want to make a comment?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I wanted to make a comment on the retirement thing. I was actually on Simply the other day, and that question was asked. And something I regretted not being able to say, which I think will speak well to this group, is, I almost feel like retirement is a fiat thing, in the sense that a century ago, 100 years ago, people just did what they loved,
Yeah.
and you kind of just rolled out of, you rolled out of bed and it wasn't work necessarily, right? Us as artists don't necessarily feel like we're working, but when you have to create things out of the stress that the fiat system has put on our shoulders, that becomes work. And I feel
Mm.
like hundreds of years ago in Europe, no one talked about retirement. I feel like a lot of people then died earlier based on just medicine and natural illnesses. But I almost feel like something I didn't get to say on Simply last Thursday was that we as Bitcoiners have the opportunity to get back to doing things that we love and not harping on retirement, because I almost feel like it's become this promised land that we are looking for, that if we start saving and sound money now, we can open our eyes and not white knuckle through life to quote unquote retirement. Anyways, that's something I wanted to add the other day, but I was on the spot and didn't have a chance to say with Nico and Opti. But I'm trying to reframe the
I think I lost you.
a negative thing. Sorry if that broke up. I had a call come in. But anyways, I wanted to add that while you were speaking on it.
Yeah, it's very interesting perspective to say, like, to live through this. What we are expecting from retirement is actually freedom.
Right.
To actually be able to just live freely right now, like don't wait. It's interesting what you say, but I do think, like, yeah, I mean, as an artist, I do feel like that freedom sometimes, but it's also like you gotta have like other jobs, side jobs to maintain yourself. Like, it's still sound money does help. I remember working for a company I used to do marketing for, and when I went, like, at the second year, like, hey, you guys are giving me more job. You don't like, my salary is getting lower because I understand inflation, and yeah, they were like, yeah, the artist girl is not gonna get it, and like, yeah, you're paying me less, and since I'm working more, I don't even want it to be compensated, because how can you compensate inflation? It will get worse tomorrow. Plus, what your measurements aren't probably very good. So I wanted a raise, not just like, and yeah, people are not gonna have it. Like, they can find someone who's willing, or it's not that about willingness. It's like need. People who will do the job for less money because they have to get 3 jobs, and I wasn't going to let go of my time to do my art. Again, I was very like, I could make the decision of not working there anymore because I knew Bitcoin, and because I have a very supportive like family and environments, but I know everyone can't make that decision.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that?
Yeah.
It's not like
100% agree.
Yeah, for sure. And art is kind of high on the Maslow scale of needs, So most people will, well, everybody needs to fill the bottom needs before they can start having, money they can spend for leisure and art and things like that. So if we're living in an economy where we're taxed 40, 50% of all the money that goes through our hands, there's nothing left for the beauty and art in the world. So we just become more and more impoverished. Our goods and services get thinner, and there's shrinkflation on top of inflation, and we get to that's why Bitcoin reverses this, and hopefully Bitcoiners will have more free time, more free money they can spend on things that bring value to their lives because they've met their basic needs. Bitcoiners, their tummies are filled with steak. They have a nice house and land they live in. They have a family, and they have kids. And now their kids are going to need to, comics to read and art to put on the wall, and have things to inspire them as they go about their day to day.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, Bitcoin is a tool that can give you time back, like the possibility to actually save time. Like, you're giving your time to work, and then you get it back, and you're supposed to get it like even better, because otherwise, why would you do it? So, and Bitcoin enables that. So I think we're gonna see like a creative explosion on every way. And I do believe this is going to be even more amazing than what we saw, like, I don't know, in the Renaissance or other like very creative periods of humanity, because of Bitcoin, because of the tool has improved. It's better than gold.
I think so too.
Yeah, so we're about to run out of time, but I wanted to ask, like, if you can please say where can people find you and all of that, please.
imakecomics.com is a forward address that will take you to the website, ratelcomic.com. And on there, you can see samples of my art, as well as the progress page where you'll see progress bars of all the steps. And I will be posting the addresses of the fundraisers when they're put up. So I expect it's going to be within a month. It's very hard to predict. I have to finish a few art pieces, write up the text, and get prices for some of the perks and stuff. But if you follow me on either on X or on Noster, you'll be able to stay up to date on when those things come out. And both of those addresses are on the website. So imakecomics.com will take you there. You go to the media page. You'll see some interviews I've done. You'll see my social media links. And follow and keep in touch. I'm looking forward to hearing from people.
Amazing. And also, before we go, is there any secret or anything you can reveal with us today?
Any secret? I'm not going to tell you my private key if that's what you're asking. Right. Nothing comes to mind. What kind of secret were you thinking?
I don't know, something cool about the project that we haven't mentioned, or something
Okay,
fun,
I'll
or
tell you.
something that you're planning.
There's a character who's not in the first part, but he's going to be coming in. He's a hacker, and he's building a robot arm because he wants his robot arm to wrestle the Canadian arm. I don't know if you guys know, but the Canadians built an arm that went on the space station, I'm told. And this character, he's going to build a big robot arm to arm wrestle with it. And that might turn into something else later. Maybe a giant robot or something will come in many years from now. We'll see.
That's very, very cool. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And thank you so much for what you're building. And also thank you to everyone who joined us today. If you have like any last message you want to say.
Stack sats, and if you got some extra sats, come and buy a comic and share it with people and read. Comics are great. Comics are fun. And it's great to be able to share our Bitcoin culture with the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you everyone so much. I hope you go have an amazing creative week, and we'll see you next time with Rebel. I'm checking our next guest. 1 second. So we have Kutsai, who is a writer. So it will be another world, a different creative world next week, because we're gonna talk about more of the writing perspective of, even though today comic mixes both worlds.
It is. That's right. You have to write a story before you can put your drawings, and comics are kind of halfway because you can take the pages, put them on a wall like art, but their main goal is to be put out into the world as stories.
Yeah, it's a very, very beautiful mix of everything plus Bitcoin. So thank you.